A customer was upset I didn't give her the right amount of fish. She was right. By usercam_TV. I used to work at a mom and pop store that sold clothes, farm supplies, animals, and sporting goods. Anyway, since we sold sporting goods we also sold bait fish. Fishermen would frequently stop by our store to buy them to fish with and they were sold by the dozen. Usually, when I scooped bait, I would give a few extra fish to my customers. I had one Russian lady come in to purchase bait fish, so just as I normally did, I scooped a net full of fish and started dumping them in the bag, counting them individually, and added a few extra to the bag. The lady watched me do this but insisted that I did not give her the correct amount. I assured her that I not only gave her the dozen she paid for but I gave her a few extra. I literally just counted and have done this long enough that I was really good at eyeing when it was over a dozen. This lady just kept insisting that I didn't give her enough, so I said, okay, let's count together just to be sure. So I dump all the fish from the bag back into the net and we started counting together very slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. We get to 12 and it's very clear there are several extra fish still in the net. I look up at her and I was like, oh, you were right, I didn't give you the right amount. I then proceeded to dump the remaining fish back into the tank right in front of her and gave her exactly the amount she paid for. Update, she ended up just looking bewildered when I handed the fish back to her and left. Really nothing more she could have done at that point, but I did start applying this philosophy to the customers who bought crickets. Can't approve overtime? Okay, I'll just leave early on Friday, by user Young Grandpa. For background, this took place in the 1990s when a T1, 1.5 Mbps data connection, would run you over $500 a month, and only the phone company and a few very large, data-centric companies would even dream of having a T3, 43 Mbps. I was working for one of those telephone companies in the central office where we provisioned and troubleshot those very lucrative services. There were 4 people in my department, making it one of the larger such office in the state. One day there was one person on vacation, and another one out of the office for some other reason. Tech number 3 called in sick. I was alone for 8 hours with the workload of 4 technicians. Well, as a good employee, I prioritized and got all the trouble tickets done, and all of the most urgent new services installed. Everything due that day was done. But in the process I missed my 2 15-minute breaks, and worked through lunch. My supervisor came down at the end of the day to congratulate me for my good work, and he was watching me fill out my timesheet for 9 hours. He started to get a little panicky, and said he couldn't approve overtime. He would get in trouble. I reminded him that I had just spent 9 hours doing the work of 4 people, 32 hours worth of work, but he said it wasn't approved. I said, what can we do then? I worked it, I need to get paid. He suggested I leave an hour early on Friday. So I agreed. Come Friday, I decided to take full advantage and only take a half-hour lunch so I could leave at 3:30 instead of 4 o'clock. Well, guess what? The vacationer and the sick person had not returned, so it was just 2 of us. The other person disappeared at 1:30 or so. I found out later she was interviewing for a management position. At 3 o'clock I got paged for a ticket on one of those very expensive T3s down hard. I was to join a conference bridge to assist in troubleshooting. I joined the call, then at 3:25 I said, sorry, I have to drop off. I'm not approved for any overtime. The night shift person will be here in a half hour to help. I dropped off, knowing the night person on duty had never worked on a T3 before. I hadn't even reached my car when the pager started blowing up. Overtime is approved, please stay on. But I had already clocked out, and so I just smiled and got into my car. Drove home and took my wife out for a long overdue date night. Edit, for those of you who followed me based on the strength of this one post, thanks, but you're sure to be disappointed. Most of my content is mundane to the extreme. Sorry, my shift is over, by user Sefielder. Many years ago, I worked for a cafeteria/catering company. The catering was much the more lucrative of the two. Between meal times we would work on catering projects. This would often run us past the end of our shift, resulting in overtime. One of the management team, recently promoted, decided his thing was going to be eliminating overtime. He held a meeting and announced to the staff there would be no more overtime. Clock out at shift's end, no exceptions. After, he got me aside and told me as a supervisor, I was expected to set an example. Okay, sure. A couple days later, I was working on a cheese display. When my shift's end came around, I put everything down, walked to the clock and swiped my card. I hear, hey, where are you going? That's not finished. No, but my shift is. I'm setting an example. I answered. Well, go finish it. I can't. I'm off work now. And left. The next day it was announced that all projects underway at the time would be allowed to be finished regardless of time, as long as it wasn't abused. In other words, no foot dragging. Turns out all the hourly employees also left, and he had to finish several projects by himself. Since he was on salary, there was no overtime for him. I understand he stayed quite late. Why wasn't I at my desk? I'll tell you why, by user Jumpy Conclusion 4633. About 15 years ago I worked in a large hospital for kids in the maintenance department. Our manager, let's call her Karen, was a major B*TCH. No one on our team liked her and we outwardly showed no respect for her after her constant harassment towards us in the 2 years she worked there. She would call us on the maintenance radios and be rude or tell the guys they were being incompetent. It was beyond micromanagement but also rude on top of it. She expected the maintenance guys to come do work at her house for free. Or would tell some of the hospital vendors she would guarantee the hospital contract if they did work at her house for cheap. She used to brag about this to me. Karen and I were the only women in our department of about 25 people. I was a mouthy 20-something-year-old and didn't care for her attitude and regularly would say yeah, sure, whatever when she asked me to do things. I would do what she asked because it was my job, but I would have made a noncommittal remark like that. One time she asked me to come to her house and help her pull down dead trees in her backyard since she was having a pool installed. I said no, mainly cause I wouldn't do it for someone I liked, let alone her, and pretty soon after she started treating me even worse than she did before. She had been trying to get me in trouble since then. Such as CCing her buddy in HR on emails to me asking for status on projects that I was working on and wanted my replies in writing. Fast forward 6 months later. Me and one of the maintenance guys were chatting in the office and I was 5 months pregnant with my first baby. She asked me to do something, I don't remember what, and I said yeah. Whatever, sure. I'll do that in a few minutes. And I turned back around to talk to my coworker. She is standing behind me and I hear her whisper, I wish I could slap the shit out of you. I can see my coworker saw her say it too and I made no comment, but I was shocked. I acted like I didn't hear her though. She left the office a min later to do something. I get up and walk down the hall to employee health department cause I am fuming and my heart was racing. Pissed. Also 5 months pregnant. The nurse has me lay down for a bit, take my vitals, write up a formal report. An hour later send me back to my desk as okay to continue working. When I log back in I see an email from Karen, with HRCCD asking where I had been for the last hour as she called the office phone a bunch of times and had abandoned my desk. So I emailed her back. I apologize for being away from my desk. When you said you'd like to slap the shit out of me, I was so upset I had to be calmed down and have mine and my baby's vitals checked at employee health, and they were concerned about my hostile working environment and wanted me to stay there for the full hour. I made sure I BCC'd her buddy in HR and all of HR, her boss and his boss, to make sure everyone saw it. I was summoned to HR about 30 minutes later. I knew Karen hadn't seen my reply yet. This was early 2000s and her computer was down in the office near me. They had me go home for the day and put me on admin leave for 3 extra days. I came back to the office to see her desk had been emptied out and we never saw her again. Those guys in maintenance threw me the best baby shower ever 3 months later. Not your family? Won't give you coffee then, by user older but not wiser 31. Okay, so this happened when I was like 13. My niece and nephew's grandma was over my sister's while I was there as well. I was staying a week. Their grandma was a sweet woman but very particular about only gifting things to her grandkids but also expecting everyone to do anything she asked. I was raised to respect my elders and be helpful, so I bit my tongue when she took the kids for ice cream but left me out. I was helpful and put away her dishes from lunch even when she came back with toys for them and still nothing for me. I kept telling myself not to expect anything from anyone because I'm not entitled to anything. I played with my niece and nephew for hours with their new toys and was so excited for them. I was glad they got spoiled for the day. When she started asking me if I liked park and swings, I got hopeful. They talked with my sister and Bill about taking the kids to the park the next day. My sister asked the grandma if she was gonna take me along since I had said I liked parked. She said, "Oh, of course not, she's not my family." That hurt. I knew it was true, but it hurt. And I got mad. So the next morning when she came for the kids and I was making my Bill coffee, she asked me to put 2 sugars in hers. She never asked me to make her a cup, so I just ignored it and brought my bil his and sat down. She asked where mine was and I just told her, oh, I only make coffee for family. She knew what I meant and tried to backtrack and say but we are family and that she hadn't meant what she said the night before. I just replied I'm sorry, I don't talk to strangers, and I walked out the room. My bil laughed so hard and told his mom, well, what do you think she's gonna say when you go around saying she's not your family? For the whole 3 days she visited, that's all I would say or respond with till my sister finally asked me to knock it off.